So me and Ed were coming up with some ideas to speak to you guys about, and Ed shared what is an absolute gem of a video that we found from General Motors, basically trying to predict what the exciting future of 1976 would be like. This video was made in 1956, so it's 20 years prior. It's basically showing the optimism of what they think the world of automation will be like. And surprisingly, they're not too far off with some stuff. Predicting the future is infamously difficult. Some stuff they're a little bit off, admittedly, but me and Ed are gonna just kind of go through it and just comment on a few things. I would definitely recommend you watch the full video as well after you've watched us because yeah, it is a it's a timepiece. It's a real gem from the past, and I unashamedly love it, to be honest. So it's basically just this family in the car, and they're just like, "Oh, let's go to the future. Let's go to 1976." So he moves the
And
dial on
away
his
they go.
radio. I mean, just look how the car is. Imagine if we had cars like that.
Hello, Tower. This is Firebird 2304. Firebird 2304.
Special effects department's just a painting, effectively, back then.
Yeah.
Firebird 2, all traffic moving in normal pattern.
FB2 to...
Red line, shorter route.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing now with sat navs. Shorter routes, scenic routes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's never easy to predict the future. And I think the first impression I get is they underestimated the amount of automation that was going to exist in the future. You have this manual tower and the guardrails, so they weren't really relying on the car 100%, to stay in its lane. You had to have those guardrails there for protection, and this guy in the tower. Uh, and it's so easy. He's right there ready to help them. So I would say underestimating automation, overestimating the convenience it would be to talk to somebody in a control tower. And this is all going to happen in 1976. So I think they were probably off by 40 or 50 years. Although you have to give them credit. Autopilot, I wonder if Elon Musk maybe saw this video and said, hey, I'm going to call my system Autopilot too.
You never, it's possible. It's possible. You never know with that. I mean, yeah, it's effectively a sat nav, but it's much more manual, much more analog than what we have now. I mean, what you're essentially doing with that when you put in your Google Maps or whatever maps provider you're going to have on your phone for directions, you are sending that request. But instead of speaking to a person, it's your phone or your device or your in-car sat nav speaking to a satellite tower and then that being beamed back down to you for the fastest way to go. So the principle's right. It's just the execution of it. But then again, they're predicting this is 1976. When did sat navs become popular? Like early 2000s, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It took a while, and and even Siri and Alexa and all that. That's even in more recent years. So Mr. Tower didn't know that he was going to be replaced, by some combination of Waze, Google Maps, Siri, and Alexa. Um, I do have to say though, the interface which showed the red line and the green line. Hey, would you like the scenic route or would you like a more direct route? That's not that different than what we have now. Although red in this case was a shorter route, which now means bad news because there's a lot of traffic or congestion out there. But with it sitting in the center of the dash, that's exactly where the Model 3 and all the Teslas displays sit. Uh, but it was, like you said, it was all analog. It was radio. There wasn't digital communication. There was no concept in the 50s of digital interfacing yet. And it was the jet age. And I think that, you can see some of the influence. I think that's where that whole tower thing comes from, right? It's controlling jets, it's controlling planes. Why not control cars in the future the same way?
Yeah, and you had things like the Jetsons later on, the cartoon series where there was all flying cars and everybody was living up in the sky. I don't know, it's been a very long time since I watched that show, but I feel like they would have had something like that in that. And maybe that was inspired from this, because this was before then. So I see what they were going for. Yeah, they're a little bit off with it, but yeah, interesting how they thought it could be done. Because could you imagine? And I think this is one of the comments as well on the video. Could you imagine millions, if not billions, of these requests coming in for people? How big of a team you would need? It wouldn't be one guy in a tower. It'd be thousands of people like operating on phones and stuff.
Well, yeah, and there was another one of the comments. If you look at the towers, they've got like this thin pole holding up this big bubble on top, and I think someone said, "How do they get up there? Do they use a jetpack or something to fly into the tower?" So, but overall, not too bad. I don't know if you call it 50-50 or 70-30, but they've got a few of the things right. The concepts is not too bad. Not too bad for, trying to look into the future, although they're way off on the date.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, that is very tough. That is very tough. I think people, how was it now? Was it Bill Gates, some big computing person said, you'll never need more than 100 megabytes of RAM or something like that. Like, you'll never need more than that. And it's like, well, yeah, we do now. We definitely do now.
So here's the whole comparison of the car to jets and aircraft and turbine engines and all this. This is where he's looking at the turbine and the pressure and all this crazy stuff. Like, who really cares how much pressure? And why is there a turbine sitting in the car anyways?
Seems perfectly safe.
Yeah.
Compressor, 31,000 RPM. Gas turbine transmission.
I will give them props though. The telemetry in cars, that's a thing now. You
Yeah.
know, that's not miles off.
No. That's true because you do get that communication on, like if you're in an accident, what's that GM service called? I forget. But there are services like that where you can talk to the helpline, I guess, right, at the automotive company to help you out. So it's not,
Yeah, I seem to remember like when we went to America for the first time, 2006. I seem to remember our car had a sat nav, but instead of just being typing in where you want to go, you could do that if you wanted to, but you could ring like a helpline and someone
yes.
would come on the other line and be like, "Oh, your nearest gas station is 100 miles away, sir," or whatever it'd be. So again, that's kind of a hybrid of what we've got now and what is being kind of in this.
Well, it's obvious in the 50s that there was an obsession with jets. And if you look at some of the car designs from the 50s, there was a big influence from jets to cars. Big tail fins, side trim. There was even hood ornaments that looked like jets. So if you look back at some of the designs from back then, you can see some of that. And you certainly see it in this car. And it does have, it looks like a twin jet turbine power. And I think in the 50s, turbine engines were the great hope for propulsion for cars. However, it turned out the turbine wasn't so good. A lot of prototypes were made. It never really went into production. Primarily, they were ended because of poor fuel economy and very, very bad on the emission side. The other thing I want to note here is they're actually starting off in Arizona and they're going to Chicago. And that's like about 1,700 miles. And they have three-quarters of a tank and they have 662 miles of range left. That's pretty good for range. So it roughly would be about 1,000-mile range, which we'd love to have that today. The best cars maybe are 400 to 500, typically more in the 200 to 300 range. So I think they got to get their mileage. They were a little bit off on the mileage there, but certainly and certainly well beyond 1976 when it comes to the range that a car typically has with one tank of fuel.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just 1,000 miles or so off with the distance. But yeah, having the range there, having all the telemetry there and everything, that is something that we have now. So it's cool to cool to see it there on the display like that. But yeah, I didn't realize that about the distance. That's very true. It's a very long way from Arizona to Chicago. And I'm pretty sure the operator's like, yeah, you're good on range, you can make it. And it's like, no, you're not. You're 1,000 miles short. You're gonna get to like, I don't know, like Missouri or something like that. You ain't gonna make it to Illinois from there.
If you're lucky, or maybe end up in the desert somewhere if you're
Yeah.
unlucky.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the autopilot thing flashing up as well. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's incredible they thought this stuff would happen. But I will say something though with the mileage thing. I mean, these cars are obviously massive. Like anybody who's seen, I mean, I do see the odd one every now and again, like an old 60s car or something, an American car as well. They're huge. They are absolutely. I mean, cars big these days are big, but these cars were bigger. Like these were massive. So in terms of the size, you could probably fit a massive fuel tank. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think General Motors made three of these prototypes, these turbine cars. This was actually the second one of three. And the material that was actually used in the car was titanium. Now, titanium is used a lot in fighter jets and that type of thing, so that probably explains that. But the use of alternative materials to steel was actually just the switch to a new material, a lighter material was on the money. But instead of being titanium, which is very, very expensive, of course, it's primarily become aluminum in typical cars, the lower cost cars, and in your more expensive cars, carbon fiber. But that was even back in the mid 50s. That was before carbon fiber had even made its way into jets. So, but the fact that they knew that the car had to be lighter, or at least it seems that they knew that, it was actually a good prediction of the future.
absolutely, yeah.
Roger, Firebird 2. Move to electronic control strip in center lane.
Oh yeah, changing lanes. They've got like I mean we have like the lane detection thing now on cars, but obviously we don't have it so there's like a little strip going down it like it's a train or a tram or something almost.
Yeah, exactly. Or like those factory robots.
Yeah. I absolutely love how he's playing Pong here as well, like on the autopilot thing.
Yeah, and that whole like oscilloscope kind of woo, woo.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen this old TV show called Outer Limits. It
No.
seems like it's straight out of that.
I mean, the front of the car looks like it's got guns or something, like a Bond car or something. Like, there we go. Sit back, relax, let autopilot take you all the way to Chicago. Good luck, Firebird one.
High speed safety lane. Oh,
Yeah, that's going like 30 miles an hour, isn't it? It's going to take him a long time to get there.
Ah, this is the life.
you know, I was looking at that. I said, I've zoomed in on that sign. It's 5/4,
Hmm.
which is this name of the section of Arizona that they're in, Sector 5, District 4 or
Oh.
something. It also, that 5/4 shows up at the beginning, I think.
I tell you what, this is the biggest thing that we've missed out on. In-car ice cream. Can
Oh,
you
I love it,
imagine?
man.
Light a cigar, have a 99. Okay, so we've stopped it here. What's going on in this bit then, Ed?
Well, first, when you saw him playing with the interface, is very, very analog.
Hmm.
I would compare it to an oscilloscope where you've got little, lines on there that are moving around, and I don't think they envisioned the digital displays and switches were also manual too. Like there's little toggle switches and that kind of thing. There's no talking directly to the car. But again, they got that autopilot right.
Hmm.
The steering wheel, just like the autopilot is what Tesla used, you can also get a steering yoke as an option on a Tesla as well. So the fact that there's a steering yoke there, not a round steering wheel, is another one that they actually got right. Now, the road, I think if we look at the design of the road, I think that's really, really interesting because that's significantly different. It's almost like they want a specific lane just for a car and then having them spaced out, which is exactly what you do with aircraft. And there's also
Oh.
this line. So the car is actually being guided by that line. So it's not really a full autonomous car. And robots have been around for decades and decades in factories where they would follow little lines around. Now, the robots that Amazon uses or some of these factories use are fully autonomous. But that line following is something that was invented probably before 1976. So they, in some ways, I think they got that one right. Uh, I also find it interesting as it changes and moves into the high speed safety lane that there's no guard or anything on that bumper. So you better not hit that guardrail that's dividing the safety lane because that would, I think all that type of thing came in much, much later. I believe they were invented probably more in the 60s. Uh, so and I guess they didn't really trust those little strips too much too because they had to have those guardrails in there just in case the car came off the strip.
Yeah, it's probably just there as well, just to show the divide between like this is the fast lane and this is the slow lane, even though, clearly in this fast lane they're doing like 30 miles an hour tops and all moving very quickly. Oh man.
Well, I think too is the car itself. I think you just have we have to say something about the car design itself.
Yeah.
Um, like I mentioned before, there were three of these cars that were these turbine cars, concept cars that were designed by GM back in the 50s. They were all called Firebirds. This is actually Firebird 2 that we're seeing here. So they got the name right because the only thing that remained from the Firebird concept cars of the 50s or these turbine cars is the actual name, which was later adopted for one of GM. I think it was the Pontiac Firebird. But the car, like I said, has a gas turbine, has titanium in it. It had all-wheel independent suspension and load leveling, power disc brakes, electric transmission, and individually controlled air conditioning. So several of those things didn't come into cars, actually commercial cars, so much, much, much later. Although when it comes to safety, I didn't see any seat belts or head restraints
Of
or anything like
course.
that in these cars. So I guess they really trusted these cars that are going to be super safe. There's no problem. But the feature that I think anyone that watches this video, and probably the one thing that you will remember for years to come, is the ice cream machine. There are cars that are available today. In fact, the 24 Cadillac Escalade at $113,000 in platinum trim does come with a refrigerator and that can be run as a freezer. So you could store your ice cream in a Cadillac Escalade freezer. However, as soon as you turn it off, even though it has a lot of insulation, eventually your ice cream will melt. But I guess you could say you can sort of have ice cream in a car now, but not in that soft serve dispenser. Oh, that I think that's fantastic. Um, the other thing, there are no cup holders, right? They forgot the cup
Ah.
holders. Yeah, so you have to hold your cup. So they that's a big mistake. I think they got that one wrong.
Yeah, cup holders and seatbelts. When did seatbelts become was it like mid 60s? They
I think
became
so in the
yeah.
60s. Yeah. So that was well, 10, 15 years after when this video was made.
There we go. There we go.
Hey, there's a Firebird 1, the original gas turbine.
That Firebird one looked just like the rocket car from The Simpsons, which you could drive in The Simpsons Hit and Run. And people who played as many PS2 games as I have, if you check my background out, you can see a few of them in there. Will recognize that. That is
Well, you
incredible.
the other thing too is, did you notice when he goes past it, he
Hmm.
calls it an old timer. It's,
Yeah.
I think that car was like the Firebird 1, the time between the Firebird 1 and Firebird 2 is like 3 years. So I guess that's what it takes to become an old timer in the 50s. So, but yeah, interesting, interesting. Yeah, this whole jet car thing. Yeah, apparently it's in video games, like you said. So maybe they got that right too.
Maybe, yeah. Although it didn't transition to the real world, thankfully. I couldn't imagine doing a school run in one of those things.
Yeah, so now they're just cruising around.
Yeah, with these highways like this, like
It's very Jetsony, isn't it?
it really is. And there's no, as far as I can tell, there's no like cars going in either direction on the same bit. They're all separated into like the forward lanes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, just like
Um,
airplanes.
oh, I say that, and then they've got that there. Just proved me wrong straight away. But but for a while it didn't have that.
Certainly no congestion.
Yeah, traffic is the thing of the past. I mean, you can see a few control towers there as well. Like, there's multiple ones. There's like one guy for each car. Like, so many questions. Oh, here we go. Because anything like this isn't complete without a musical number.
Go down, hey, Mr. Tower.
The part I like is Mr. Control Tower
Yeah.
sings as well.
That we relax for the night. Okay, Firebird, I'll put you on the beat. The sunset in's a honey, and the hostess is a dream.
Good evening, modern travelers. Won't you be our guest? We have push button living at its very best. There's automatic sleep control in every bed.
Pre-digested food.
That sounds horrible.
Tower man, take us that way. Roger, Firebird, I'll swing you to the right.
There's plenty to talk about here.
There's a fair bit to unpack there. Yeah, I forgot about the pre-digested food. Like, did they think that was the future? Like, you know what? In the future, you won't even have to digest things. It's all done for you before you eat. Like, what does that even
That's
mean?
the most fun part about eating is the chewing and enjoying the flavors. But oh no, we're going to eliminate that because you don't have enough time. You have to get to your automatic sleep control bed, whatever that is. I think it sounds good, automatic sleep control, but maybe it like zaps you to sleep instantly or something like that.
Yeah, I don't really want to think what that could possibly mean. Sounds rather nefarious, I'll be honest, but they seem happy about it.
Yeah, and they're so happy that they just keep singing. I don't know. Everybody in the 50s is singing all the time. And even the control tower guy is singing. Well, I guess not a bad thing. People feel good when they sing. But um, yeah, I have to say one thing though that they got right, which maybe we could even take some advice from, which
Hmm.
is, hey, I'm getting off the highway. I'm getting off the motorway now. I'm gonna take over manual control. So it's almost
Hmm.
like they're saying, and in a way, if you look at what we're talking about here, like for instance with autonomous trucks on the highway and platooning and that type of thing, it'll be a lot easier or significantly easier to get autonomy to work on a highway. Slightly more
Yeah.
controlled environment, is higher speed. That's probably, like as I said, a bit easier than driving in the complex environment that you would have in a city, and that's what they envision there. So they might have. They're saying, hey, let's stick to level 4 and not go quite to level 5 just yet. So I think that one you probably say they probably got that one right.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I mean, I think most people, most drivers would probably agree with that as well. Because, like, for me personally, I would never do autonomous driving in a car, but if I were to do it, it would be on the motorway. Like I don't really ever use things like cruise control unless I'm on the motorway because partly because traffic's usually really bad and you're having to do lots of stop starts and stuff. But it makes sense when you're doing these long distances on these highways.
So I would say overall, probably not a bad job. Um, you always have to take it in light of what was happening in society and in culture at the time with the jet age and all that coming in. So there's a lot of influence from aircraft and the way airplanes operate, not only in how they operate, but also in how the cars look and the turbine engines and all that kind of thing. The whole idea of digital not existing yet. So everything's tending towards the analog. And I think they never figured that computers were going to be smart enough to talk to you. You're still going to have that human in there to interpret language and execute commands by hitting those little toggle switches.
Yeah, I mean, if you see the every now and again, I see a picture of an IBM. I think it's a 1 megabyte hard drive or 1 megabyte computer from the 60s, and it's being loaded off the back of a truck, and it's basically the entire back of the truck in terms of its size. Like you can't get it through the door. And that was after this. That was after this. So to imagine computers being smart enough to do things that we do in terms of communication, like just between me and you, for example, or whatever, it's it would have seemed so like that's like 1,000 years in the future. That's not 20 years in the future. That's hundreds, thousands of years in the future. But it came around a lot quicker than they thought.
And I think you're right in what they envisioned computers could do, certainly from a size standpoint. I think one of the first computers was called the ENIAC, I believe, and it was big as a room.
Yeah.
So to think that you could even put it on a trailer, like you said, which would have been much later, much less take the power of a computer like that and put it inside of a cell phone, right? Which
Well, yeah.
really is what's made all this possible, was beyond even what they could imagine. So, but you know what? We can pick on those people in the 50s all we want. If we had to predict what was going to happen, I guess in 2040, I wonder how close we could get now. Maybe that could be another episode we do.
Oh no. Oh no. Let's not. Let's
They'll
not.
be picking on us in 2045.
People are picking on me now, but yeah, I know what you mean. Oh yeah, it's fascinating going down memory lane with something like this sort of vision of the future that's actually far in the past. Like I don't know if we actually recorded that bit at the start, but before we actually went on, I was speaking about Back to the Future 2 and how that's set in 2015, but that's actually the past for us now. So I love looking at these retrospective, futuristic predictions about what is now the past for us, but what was the future for them, and seeing what they got right and what they got wrong. And yeah, fitting an actual proper computer in a car when you've got to make room for things like an ice cream dispenser. You know, it's prime real estate in there. There's not enough there's not enough room to get it in. But yeah, that is it. Yeah, do check out the video if you guys want to check it out the whole thing as well. There's a musical number we skipped out at the start as well, which is definitely worth watching. But yeah, really fascinating having this chat with you, Ed. Absolutely. Again, thanks for finding this. It's an absolute gem. Like I said, this is a real unique video. One of the best things I've ever watched on YouTube, to be fair. It has to be.
Well, and I think, maybe as a last comment, if you were to go back to 1956, they were 100% right because no one could prove that they were wrong then.
Yeah.
So it's easy to predict the future for that very reason.
Yeah, it is very tough to predict the future. You get some things right, you get some things right. I don't think they did too bad here, like you said, overall. But yeah, what do you guys think? Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. What were you most surprised about with this video? For me, something I never clocked on the first time I watched this, the seatbelts thing. Never even thought about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Ed. Back then, it was just not really a thing. But now it's something we absolutely take for granted.
That's right. Well, we'll have to start working on that 2040 video here soon.
24. Yeah, we'll try and predict 20 years from now. Maybe electric cars will finally be the most popular option for people by then. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah,
We'll
speaking
finally
of,
get that 1,000-mile range they were looking for in 1956.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, we could get it by then for sure. You could go from Arizona to Chicago on one charge. Oh well, no, thanks for sticking with us, guys, on this one. Bit of a different one today, where me and Ed actually react to some content online. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comments below, and of course, like I did give a little mention to electric vehicles, there we've got a lot of videos going over them and hybrids and the future of them and the present of them and everything like that on the motoringchronicle.com. So yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon, guys. Have a good one. See you later.
See you later.